Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to unpack a 150-year-long story, and it's about a crisis that didn't start on some street corner. Nope, this one started right in the doctor's office.
So, how on earth did a prescribed painkiller end up igniting a full-blown national emergency? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we've got to go back, way back. We're talking about a moment that really changed America forever, and it all kicks off on the battlefields of the Civil War. Yeah, this is not some recent problem that just popped up. We're looking at a chain of events stretching back over a century and a half, and you'll see each link in this chain, it just builds on the one before it. All right, let's dive in. Our story starts way back in 1861, right on the battlefields of the American Civil War. A new wonder drug had just arrived from Germany, and it was about to completely change the face of military medicine. You have to imagine soldiers were in just absolute agony from these horrific injuries. And then this German company comes along with a solution, a super powerful pain reliever called morphine. It was so good at killing pain that they started shipping it across the Atlantic, and it became this absolutely critical supply for both the Union and the Confederate armies. And this is really the key to understanding this whole first chapter. Back then, they had little to no idea how addictive it was. For doctors, it was this revolutionary, totally safe medicine. You were in pain, you got morphine. It was really as simple as that. But then, when the war was over, the soldiers came home, and they brought a hidden problem with them. Doctors started noticing this really disturbing trend. Veterans kept showing up asking for more morphine, even when they didn't have any new injuries. It got so common they even gave it a name, the soldier's disease. And that was the very first hint of all the trouble that was still to come. Okay, so as morphine addiction started spreading from the soldiers out into the general public, American doctors got, well, pretty alarmed. They went back to the drug's creators in Germany and basically demanded a solution. So, the company, you've heard of them, Bayer, they went back to the lab, and they had a very, very clear goal. Let's engineer a new version of morphine that has all of the awesome pain relief, but none of the addiction. That was the idea, anyway. And this is where we hit the story's first major, absolutely tragic irony. The quote-unquote safe alternative they came up with? It was a chemical called diacetylmorphine. And they marketed it under a brand new, very heroic-sounding name. Heroin. Yeah, you heard that right. It was sold over the counter for literally everything from chest pains to coughs. Because, opioids also suppress your respiratory system, which stops you from coughing. And the strategy worked a little too well. It made the addiction problem exponentially worse. It created such a huge crisis that eventually President Theodore Roosevelt had to step in and create the FDA just to regulate drugs like this. So for the next few decades, opioids were pretty restricted. Things calmed down a bit. But then, in the 1950s, a brilliant psychiatrist and, maybe more importantly, a marketing visionary named Arthur Sackler came along, and he changed the game forever. Okay, so check this out, because this is Sackler's revolutionary insight. He realized the key wasn't to sell drugs directly to patients. No. The real trick was to convince their doctors. So he started creating these official-looking medical journals and papers, filled with data and graphs, all designed to convince physicians that a drug was effective and safe. He basically bypassed public advertising completely and went straight for the prescribers. And this wasn't just a theory. He and his family put this exact strategy into practice with their own company, Purdue Pharma. Their first big success was a drug called MS Continue. It was a slow-release morphine pill, and it was designed specifically for the severe, end-of-life pain that cancer patients go through. But here's the thing. MS Continue had a problem. Not a medical one, a business one. Its patent was about to expire. So to protect their profits, Purdue needed a new blockbuster drug, and they needed it like yesterday. So what do? This is the crucial part. They decide to make their own successful product obsolete before a competitor could. It's kind of like the Apple strategy, right? Releasing the iPhone 12 just to kill sales of the iPhone 11. So they launched a successor drug based on a slightly different opioid molecule, and they called it OxyContin. So dusting off Arthur Sackler's old marketing playbook, Purdue launched this just
unprecedented campaign targeting doctors. They started claiming that OxyContin was safe not just for that severe cancer pain, but for all kinds of common pain. We're talking backaches, arthritis, you name it. And then they made this absolutely stunning claim that the risk of addiction was less than 1%. And the results? They were just staggering. Doctors completely bought the pitch. Prescriptions just soared. And sales? Well, they exploded. They went from a very successful $48 million launch to an absolutely unheard of $1.6 billion in just 6 years. But there was a fatal flaw, a catastrophic design flaw that it turns out the company knew about. You see that special 12-hour slow-release coating? It could be defeated easily. All you had to do was crush or even chew the pill, and it would release the entire dose all at once, delivering this massive heroin-like high instantly. And this is what triggered that predictable, devastating cycle. You had patients prescribed this stuff for just moderate pain who suddenly found themselves powerfully addicted. So what happens when their prescriptions run out? Well, a lot of them turn to the black market to get more pills. But when those became too expensive, they switched to a cheaper, chemically similar alternative, which was, of course, heroin. Well, decades of lawsuits followed, and the truth behind all that marketing finally came out. And that number you see, $4.5 billion, that was the penalty the Sackler family was ordered to pay. Now, that settlement, it bankrupted their company, Purdue Pharma. But it also did something else. It shielded the family from any future lawsuits. And to this day, not a single member of the Sackler family has served any jail time for their role in this crisis. And that quote right there, it really highlights the tragic legacy of OxyContin. It became a gateway drug. It proved that the path to addiction and illegal drug use didn't have to start on a street corner. It could start in a place you're supposed to trust, a doctor's office, with a perfectly legal prescription. So this whole 150-year story, all the way from the battlefields of the Civil War to the boardrooms of a modern pharmaceutical company, it really leaves us with a critical question, doesn't it? When a company's marketing is so powerful, it can literally change how medicine is practiced. Who is ultimately responsible for the consequences? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.